Welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use pivot tables to separate and organize your data. Pivot tables are a really easy way to use queries to organize your data into rows and columns in ways that can make you filter and make sense of the data. In this example, we're looking at school funding from year to year. And this is an example actually from the Google for Education website, where we see how some schools over the course of a number of years log some data such as what was their average test score, school population, and funding. And this would be a scenario where you as like a district level administrator might need to decide how you want to allocate funds. You could also do this within your school about, for example, like which departments get the most money based on like map test data or something like that. But how do you make sense of it? And right now in this raw form, it's kind of hard to interpret. So we're going to use a pivot table to do this. And the way you insert a pivot table, it's quite easy. You go to Data, and then you go to Pivot Table. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a tab at the bottom of your spreadsheet. And, our original tab is still over here, and our pivot table right here pops up. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask you, how do you want this? How do you want this kind of formatted? And I think what would make sense to me is to have the schools over here in column A. So on my column, I'm going to add columns. I'm going to add school. And by the way, if you don't like it, if you kind of make a mistake, and just say, oh, wait a minute, I don't like that, you can just X out of that. And so I'm actually going to put the school under rows. So we have our schools here, and now for columns, I'm going to put year. And I want to see how the schools did from year to year to year. Now what values are we going to put in here? And at first glance, I think I'm just going to put in average score. And this is kind of interesting, and I can see already from the grand total that looks like Rydell had the highest score on average. But I'm also kind of curious to see how this might have been impacted by the value of school funding. And so I'm just going to pop in funding. And so now we can see this is added up here, and we can see what this looks like. And right now, this already is glean a lot of information for us. We can kind of sort through this and decide, well, yeah, this Rydell did really well. It looks like they got a lot of funding that year, and so did Thomas Jefferson. We can also have this sorted by different ways. Like, for example, we could sort this by school. We could actually sort this by the sum of the funding. So over here, we can see here that we could do this by funding of the grand total. And now we can see that it looks like this Rydell school actually did have the most funding here, and also they had quite a high number of average scores, which were averaged for some of these columns. So this is how a pivot table works, and it's really useful for making sense of data, manipulating data, to be able to interpret it and to make recommendations based on it.